The stars bent and twisted as the human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Captain Ji-hoon Park gripped his chair's armrest and watched the viewport stabilize. After 3 months of testing their new drive system, they had finally pushed far enough from Earth to find something remarkable. What they found was beyond anything they had imagined. A massive structure floated in the darkness of space. It was larger than Earth's moon, covered in lights and moving parts. Ships of strange designs moved around it like insects around a hive. Some were shaped like spirals, others like crystals, and some defied any description Ji-hoon could put into words. "We're being scanned," said Yoonji Kim from her science station. She adjusted her glasses and studied her screens with focused intensity. Multiple energy signatures. "They're not hostile, just measuring us." Before Ji-hoon could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in a language that sounded like wind chimes and distant thunder. Then, suddenly it switched to perfect English. "Unregistered vessels, you have entered Talveen Consortium space. Proceed to registration station, Theta 9 for processing. Deviation from escort path will result in administrative penalties." Ji-hoon exchanged glances with Daeho Choi, his military advisor. Daeho shrugged. They'd come seeking first contact, and here it was. Not the dramatic meeting they had imagined, but first contact nonetheless. 3 alien ships appeared alongside the human fleet. They were elegant things, covered in decorative panels and glowing with soft blue light. They guided the human vessels toward the massive station with the efficiency of traffic police. The docking process took 2 hours. The aliens seemed more interested in filling out digital forms than in actually meeting humanity. When Ji-hoon and his team finally stepped onto the station, they found themselves in a waiting area that looked like every government office ever built. There were rows of seats, information displays in dozens of languages, and that universal atmosphere of bureaucratic tedium. A Talveen official approached them. It walked on 4 legs, had 6 thin arms, and a head that reminded Ji-hoon of a flower with too many petals. Its skin was pale green and almost transparent. "Species designation?" the official asked, holding a glowing tablet. Human Ji-hoon replied. "From Earth, or planet of origin coordinates." Ji-hoon provided them. The official tapped at its tablet with 3 hands simultaneously. "Gravity preference?" "Standard Earth gravity? About 9.8 meters per second squared." The official paused. Several of its head petals twitched. "That is quite high." "Noted temperature range?" "We prefer around 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, but we can survive from about -42 plus 50. Another pause. More twitching. "Radiation tolerance?" Yenji stepped forward. "We have some natural resistance. Nothing exceptional by our standards." The official made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. "I see. You will be classified as Class 7 peripheral species. High gravity preference, extreme temperature tolerance, and biological volatility markers detected. For your safety and the safety of other species, you will be assigned to Settlement Zone Gamma 447. Please review this orientation packet." The official handed Ji-hoon a data device and walked away before anyone could ask questions. Daeho frowned. "That's it? We just made first contact with an alien empire, and we get processed like we're applying for a parking permit?" They spent the next day reviewing the orientation materials. What they learned was both fascinating and puzzling. The Talveen Consortium was vast beyond comprehension. Over 40,000 star systems, more than 800 member species. It had existed for over 12,000 years. But as Yoonji dug deeper into the technical specifications provided, she noticed something strange. "Ji-hoon? Look at this," she said during their evening meeting. The team had gathered in their assigned quarters, which were oddly spacious. The environmental requirements for most species in the consortium. The average gravity preference is about 6 meters per second squared. That's barely 60% of Earth's gravity. "So we prefer heavier worlds," Daeho said. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure yet. But look at temperature ranges. Most species operate comfortably in a 15-degree range. We can handle over 90 degrees of variation. And radiation. She pulled up another chart. This is listed as the extreme danger threshold for most species. It's less than we experience on Earth from natural background radiation. Jihoon leaned back in his chair. Are you saying we're tougher than most aliens? I'm saying we're different. Very different. And I don't think they realize just how different. The next day, they were escorted to their assigned world. It was listed as Planet GC4473 in the Consortium database. The escort pilot, a four-eyed creature that spoke through a translation device, seemed almost apologetic. Quarantine world, the pilot explained. High gravity, unstable star, frequent solar radiation. Not suitable for civilized species. But your kind should manage, probably. When they arrived, Jihoon stood on the bridge and looked at their new home. It was a beautiful world. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked almost exactly like Earth. Unstable star? Yeonji said, checking her instruments. The radiation levels are completely normal. This is safer than standing outside on a sunny day back home. High gravity, Daeho added. It's 9.7 meters per second squared. That's barely different from Earth. They landed and explored. The air was breathable. The temperature was comfortable. There were plants and small animals. It was, by human standards, a paradise world. By consortium standards, it was apparently too dangerous for regular settlement. Over the following weeks, more human ships arrived. They began building New Sol. Their first colony beyond Earth, supply ships came from the consortium, bringing equipment and materials. The deliveries were efficient but impersonal. Humanity was officially a member of galactic civilization, but it felt more like they had been given a distant corner to play in while the adults handled important matters. Jihoon stood at the edge of the growing city one evening. Watching the alien sun set over strange trees, Yoonji joined him. I've been analyzing the consortium's history files, she said. Do you know what's interesting? There hasn't been a new major member species in over 800 years. Most species join, get classified, get assigned to appropriate zones, and that's it. The system runs on routine. And we're just another routine entry, Jihoon said. Maybe, or maybe they just don't have the context to understand what we are. They measured us by their standards. High gravity to them is normal to us. Extreme temperature to them is a seasonal change to us. Dangerous radiation to them is a mild summer day to us. Jihoon smiled. So we wandered into a galactic empire, and they barely noticed we're unusual. Exactly, Yeonji said. The question is, what do we do about it? Jihoon looked up at the stars, now showing the positions of thousands of consortium worlds. Somewhere out there, in those vast networks of civilization, humanity had just been filed away as species number 847, Class 7 peripheral. Barely worth a second thought. We survive, he said finally. We build. We learn. And we see where this goes. If they want to underestimate us, let them. We'll figure out what we really are in our own time. Above them, the first consortium trade ship entered orbit, bringing supplies and expecting nothing remarkable in return. It was a routine delivery to a routine new species on a routine quarantine world. The pilot would file a routine report and move on to the next assignment. Nobody noticed that. Something extraordinary had just entered their empire. But then again, nobody was really looking. 5 years passed quickly on New Sol. What had started as a small colony had grown into a thriving city of 2 million humans. Governor Minho Lee stood in his office on the 40th floor of the administrative building and looked out over the sprawling urban landscape. Ships came and went from the spaceport every day now. Most were human vessels, but increasingly, alien traders had begun to visit. The consortium had left humanity largely alone, which suited Minho just fine. They filed their reports, paid their administrative fees, and in return, they were allowed to expand to nearby star systems. Humanity now controlled 7 worlds, all of them classified as marginal or quarantine zones by consortium standards. All of them were perfectly comfortable for human habitation. Sorhan walked into his office without knocking. She was his intelligence analyst. Sharp-minded woman who had spent the last 3 years studying every piece of consortium data she could access. "Governor, we need to talk," she said, placing a data tablet on his desk. Minho picked it up and scrolled through her report. His eyebrows rose steadily as he read. "This can't be right," he said finally. "I've checked it 17 times. It's right." The report was simple but staggering. According to consortium environmental databases, 85% of all cataloged planets in their empire were classified as uninhabitable. Not just difficult to settle, completely uninhabitable for the vast majority of species. "But these worlds," Minho said, pointing to a list, "half of these would be perfectly fine for us. This one has slightly high gravity. This one has a bit more radiation. This one is colder. We could live on any of them with minimal infrastructure." "Exactly," Sora said. "The consortium isn't limited by technology or resources. They're limited by biology. Most species in the Empire are fragile compared to us. They need narrow environmental bands to survive. We don't." Minho sat back in his chair. "Have they noticed this?" "I don't think so. Remember, we're Class 7 peripheral. Our files are probably reviewed once every few years by some junior bureaucrat. We're not important enough for detailed analysis. And we keep it that way," Minho said. "For now." Meanwhile, Yuna Kong was having the time of her life. As humanity's primary trade liaison, she had spent the last 2 years traveling to different consortium worlds, establishing business relationships, and learning about alien cultures. Her favorite contact was Kelvix, a Talvine merchant who traded in manufactured goods. They met at a cafe on Station Helios 5, a major trading hub. Kelvix's flower petal head bobbed with amusement as Yuna described humanity's latest export offering. "Hand tools?" Kelvix said through his translator. "Yuna, nobody makes hand tools anymore. Everything is automated, fabricated, or assembled by machines." "I know," Yuna said, sipping a drink that tasted like mint and copper, "but our hand tools are really good. They're simple, durable, and cheap. Some of your frontier worlds might want them." Kelvix made that balloon sound that Yuna had learned meant skepticism, but he agreed to take a sample shipment. 2 months later, he contacted her with an urgent request for 50,000 more units. "What happened?" Yuna asked. "They love them," Kelvix admitted. "Your tools don't break. Our fabricated equipment is efficient but delicate. It requires maintenance, replacement parts, technical support. Your primitive hammers and wrenches just work forever, apparently. My frontier customers are buying everything you send." "Primitive?" Yuna smiled. "I'll let that slide because you just became my best customer." The real shift in perception began with an accident. A Talvine colony world called Pelavos 7 experienced a solar storm. These were common enough in the consortium, and standard procedure was simple. Everyone evacuated to underground shelters, while automated systems maintained the surface infrastructure. The problem was that Pelavos 7's shield generators failed. Just before the storm hit, 20 human construction workers were on the planet, building a new residential complex for Talvine families. When the evacuation order came, they helped their Talvine co-workers reach the shelters. Then they realized the shields were offline. "We have to fix them," said Daeho Choi's nephew, Jinwoo, who was leading the construction crew. "If those shields stay down, the solar radiation will fry all the surface equipment. The colony will be crippled for months." The Talvin supervisor looked at him in horror. "You can't go out there during a solar storm. The radiation levels will be lethal within minutes." Jinwoo checked his scanner. "It's not that bad. We'll wear our suits. We've got maybe an hour before it gets really dangerous." "An hour?" The supervisor's pedals were shaking. "The safe limit is 6 minutes. "For you, maybe," Jinwoo said. "We're a bit tougher. Come on, crew. Let's move." The 20 humans went out into the storm. The radiation levels would have killed any Talvine in 10 minutes. The humans worked for 45 minutes, repairing the damaged generators and bringing the shields back online. When they returned to the shelter, they found the entire Talvine population staring at them in shock. "You should be dead," the supervisor whispered. Jinwoo shrugged. "We feel fine. Maybe a bit warm, The incident was reported to consortium authorities. The report filed it as minor infrastructure maintenance during unexpected equipment failure. There was no mention of the fact that humans had done something impossible by Talveen standards. It was simply filed away in the vast bureaucracy, but the Talveen colonists remembered. Word spread quietly through personal channels. Humans were different. Humans could survive things that killed other species. Sora brought this incident to Minho's attention, along with a dozen others like it. Humans helping during accidents. Humans working in conditions other species found dangerous. Humans thriving on worlds others avoided. We're becoming useful, Sora said, and nobody in the consortium leadership has noticed. Minho pulled up strategic maps of consortium space. Show me the incident with those raiders. The Vrel. Sora switched the display. Over the past year, a species called the Vrel had been attacking outer colonies. They were violent, aggressive, and seemed to target wealthy worlds with weak defenses. The consortium had responded slowly, hampered by bureaucratic approval processes and risk-averse military doctrine. 3 human trading outposts had been hit, Sora said. Small attacks. They retreated quickly when our security teams fought back, the consortium's response. They filed protests. Scheduled diplomatic meetings. The earliest military response is planned for 8 months from now. Minho felt a cold anger settle in his chest. We're members of this consortium. We pay our fees. We follow their rules. And when we're attacked, they schedule meetings. They're not used to real threats, Sora said. According to historical records, the consortium hasn't faced a major conflict in over 200 years. They've forgotten how to respond to violence. Minho made a decision. Start quietly expanding our defense fleet. Nothing that will trigger consortium alarms. But I want us ready to protect our own people. If the Vrel come back, we won't wait for permission to defend ourselves. That could be seen as militarization, Sora warned. Class 7 species aren't supposed to have significant military forces, and they should protect us better, Minho said flatly. We'll keep it quiet, but we'll be ready. Over the next 6 months, humanity began a careful build-up. Ships that were officially listed as cargo haulers were equipped with weapons. Training facilities that were officially for civilian security teams were actually preparing soldiers. Bases that were officially mining outposts were actually military installations. The consortium noticed none of it. The reports were filed, the fees were paid, and humanity remained a boring entry in their vast database. Class 7 peripheral species. 7 settled worlds. Moderate trade activity? Nothing remarkable. Yuna met with Kelvix again. It's time on New Sol. The Talveen merchant was impressed by the city's growth. You build quickly, he observed. We're good at building, Yuna agreed. Kelvix, can I ask you something? Do you think the consortium is as strong as it used to be? Kelvix was quiet for a long moment. You've noticed. Most new species don't notice for decades, if ever. But yes, the consortium has been in decline for 2 centuries. We're stable, but stagnant. We've forgotten how to innovate, how to take risks, how to adapt. We maintain what we have, but we don't grow anymore. And the Vrel? A symptom of that decline. Small predators, taking advantage of our slow responses and risk-averse policies. We'll deal with them eventually. Probably. Maybe. Yuna looked out over New Sol at the busy streets filled with humans going about their lives. What if someone had to defend the consortium? Really defend it, with strength and speed. Who would do it? Kelvix made a sound like wind through leaves. I don't know, Yuna. I honestly don't know. We haven't needed real defenders in so long. I'm not sure we'd recognize them if they appeared. Yuna smiled, but it was a sad smile. Maybe they're already here. You just haven't noticed them yet. High above the planet, new human ships slipped into orbit. They were painted to look like cargo vessels, but they carried weapons and soldiers. Humanity was preparing for something the consortium couldn't see coming. They would protect themselves, and perhaps protect others too. Whether anyone acknowledged it or not. The attack on Haven Colony came without warning. Haven was a mixed settlement on the edge of consortium space. Home to 53,000 beings from 12 different species, 3,000 of them were human. Admiral Taeyong received the distress call in the middle of the night. He was at the human naval base on New Seoul, reviewing supply reports, when his communication officer burst into his office. "We're getting emergency broadcasts from Haven. Vrel attack fleet. At least 80 ships." Taeyong was moving before the officer finished speaking. "Get me Commander Jiwon Nam. Alert all ships within jump range. And someone get me the consortium military response time." The answer to that last question came back quickly: 12 days minimum. The nearest consortium defense fleet was 2 weeks away at their standard travel speed. By then, Haven would be destroyed. Taeyong looked at his own fleet. 15 human ships. Most of them were officially cargo vessels that had been quietly armed over the past year. They had never been tested in real combat. Going up against 80 Vrel warships was suicide by any reasonable calculation. "Prepped for immediate jump," he said. "All available ships. We're going to Haven." His officers stared at him. "Sir, we're outnumbered 5 to 1. "I can count," Taeyong said coldly. "We're still going. Those are our people down there. Move." On Haven Colony, Commander Gi Wen-nam was already organizing the defense. She was supposed to be on vacation, visiting the colony's famous gardens with her family. Instead, she was gathering every human with military training and setting up defensive positions. The other species were evacuating too. Underground shelters and escape ships. It was standard consortium procedure. When attacked, evacuate, and wait for official military response. The problem was that escape ships were already leaving and there wasn't room for everyone. The Vrel ships were destroying anything that tried to flee. "We have to hold the surface," Jawan told her hastily assembled force. "If we can keep the Vrel busy, more people can evacuate." She had 200 humans with military training. Most had brought their families to Haven for civilian reasons. Now they were the only thing standing between 50,000 civilians and a Vrel invasion force. The Vrel landed troops in multiple locations. They were large creatures covered in thick armor plating, carrying heavy weapons. They moved through the colony with practiced efficiency, destroying infrastructure, killing anyone who resisted. They were not expecting resistance from humans. The first Vrel squad that encountered Kwan's forces was confused when the humans didn't run. They were even more confused when the humans started shooting back with deadly accuracy. The third thing that confused them was when human soldiers charged directly at them, closing to hand-to-hand combat range. Vrel were larger and stronger than most consortium species. They were used to enemies who fled or died quickly. Humans did neither. The human soldiers were smaller, but they were fast, relentless, and seemed to feel no fear. When Vrel weapons hit them, they sometimes went down, but often they just kept fighting. Their armor was primitive, their weapons basic, but their determination was absolute. The battle for Haven Colony lasted 6 days. The Vrel had expected to take the planet in 6 hours. Instead, they found themselves fighting a grinding, brutal war against an enemy that refused to break. The humans gave ground slowly, making the Vrel pay for every street, every building, every meter. They set traps, ambushes, and fought from positions that other species would have considered suicidal. On the 3rd day, a Vrel commander confronted a wounded human soldier who had been holding a choke point alone for 3 hours. The Vrel demanded, "You are defeated." The human, a young woman named Hyjin, smiled through bloody teeth. Defined defeated. She detonated the explosives she had been lying on. Taking the Vrel commander and his entire squad with her, Taeyong's fleet arrived on the 4th day. His 15 ships dropped out of jump space and immediately engaged the Vrel fleet. The Vrel turned to face this new threat, confident in their numerical superiority. That confidence lasted about 10 minutes. Human ships fought. Nothing like consortium vessels. Consortium naval doctrine was based on long-range engagements, careful positioning, and avoiding damage to expensive ships. Human doctrine was based on one simple principle: win. Taeyong's ships charged directly into the Vrel formation. They used ramming tactics, boarding actions, and fought in close quarters where the Vrel's superior numbers meant less. When Vrel ships tried to create distance, Human ships pursued them into asteroid fields and debris clouds. Their sensors didn't work well, but human pilots excelled. The space battle was chaos. Human ships took damage that would have forced consortium vessels to retreat. Instead, they kept fighting. One human destroyer had its main engines destroyed, but continued fighting with maneuvering thrusters, spinning and firing in a pattern that the Vrel couldn't predict. Another ship, completely disabled, became a weapons platform, its crew manually aiming and firing until the Vrel finally destroyed it. On the fifth day, the Vrel began to retreat. They had lost 30 ships and suffered thousands of casualties on the ground. The humans had lost 4 ships and 67 soldiers. By any mathematical calculation, the Vrel should have won easily. Instead, they fled. Juwan stood in the ruins of Haven's central square and watched the last Vrel ships jump away. She was exhausted, covered in dust and blood, and her right arm was bandaged from a shrapnel wound. Around her, the surviving human soldiers sat or stood. Too tired to celebrate, a Talvine civilian approached her carefully. "Commander, we watched. We saw what you did. You saved us." Giwan nodded, too tired for words. "The consortium will surely recognize this," the Talvine continued. "You've won a great victory." Giwan just looked at him. She wanted to believe that. She really did. The consortium report on the Haven incident was filed 3 weeks later. It listed the attack, the casualties, and the resolution. The human involvement was mentioned briefly. Local security forces, supplemented by arriving Class 7 peripheral species vessels, maintained defensive positions until Vrel forces withdrew due to favorable stellar conditions and equipment malfunctions. There was no mention of the 6-day ground battle. No mention of the 67 humans who died. No mention of the fact that 15 human ships had defeated 80 Vrel vessels. It was filed as a minor incident, resolved through a combination of luck and enemy equipment failure. Hiron Bey, humanity's diplomatic representative, tried to correct the report. She filed formal protests, provided combat footage, and testified before 3 different subcommittees. Her reports were received politely, filed appropriately, and scheduled for review by Subcommittee C-447. In approximately 18 months, she returned to New Seoul in frustration and met with Governor Min-ho Lee. "They don't see us," she said. "We just saved 50,000 lives and they literally cannot see it. The report is filed in a way that makes it seem like the Vrel just gave up for no reason." Min-ho looked out his window at the growing city. More ships were arriving every day now. More humans, more construction, more growth. And in orbit, more warships disguised as civilian vessels. "Then we stop trying to make them see us," he said quietly. "We do what needs to be done, and we don't wait for permission or recognition." "That could be dangerous," Hiron warned. Operating outside consortium approval, the consortium takes 12 days to respond to emergencies. Min-ho interrupted. "In 12 days, thousands can die. We can respond in hours. So we will, quietly, unofficially. We'll defend consortium space because someone has to, even if they never acknowledge it." Tae-young joined them, still wearing his admiral's uniform. "The crew is calling Haven the Quiet War. We fought, we won, and nobody noticed." "Let them not notice," Min-ho said. "We don't need credit. We need to be ready for the next time. Because there will be a next time." He was right. Over the following months, human ships began appearing wherever there was trouble. Pirates attacking a convoy found themselves facing human security vessels. A colony threatened by natural disaster was saved by human evacuation ships. A space station with failing life support was repaired by human engineers who worked in conditions that would kill other species. Each time, incidents were filed in official reports. Each time, the human involvement was minimized or attributed to favorable conditions. The consortium bureaucracy simply couldn't process the idea that a Class 7 peripheral species was becoming its most effective problem-solver in the shadows of official recognition. Humanity became the invisible shield, protecting an empire that barely knew they existed. They didn't do it for glory. They did it because people needed help. They were the only ones capable of providing it quickly enough. The Quiet War had begun. It would continue for years, unnoticed and unacknowledged. But those who were saved would remember. They would remember the humans who came when no one else did. They would remember even if the official records forgot. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the consortium, filed away in subcommittee reports and incident databases, the evidence accumulated, slowly, quietly, waiting for someone to finally notice what it meant. 20 years had passed since humanity first entered consortium space. New Sol was now a major city, and humans had settled 40 star systems. In the official consortium records, they remained classified as Class 7 peripheral species, a minor member of the galactic community. In reality, they had become something very different. Admiral Subin Park stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Sol's Pride. She was Jihoon Park's daughter. Born during that first year on New Sol, she had grown up surrounded by alien cultures, learned consortium history in school, and joined the Human Defense Fleet as soon as she was old enough. Now, at 28, she commanded humanity's largest naval force. "Admiral, we have another request," said her communications officer. "Station Helios 12. Structural failure in their docking ring. They're asking if we can help." Subin didn't hesitate. "Send the engineering teams. Make it look like we were passing through anyway. It was always like this. Somewhere in consortium space, something was always going wrong, and humans were always quietly fixing it." Over the past 2 decades, humanity had developed an entire shadow operation. When pirates threatened trade routes, human ships appeared. When natural disasters struck colonies, human rescue teams arrived. When space stations needed repair, human engineers showed up, and every single time, they erased their presence from official records. It wasn't cowardice. It was strategy. The moment the consortium bureaucracy noticed humanity's activities, they would drown them in regulations, approvals, and administrative oversight. So humans worked in the shadows, helping where they could, letting others take credit. Junho ran the Covert Operations Network. He was a quiet man who preferred working behind scenes. His office on New Sol looked like an ordinary import-export business. In reality, it coordinated human activities across thousands of light years. "We're running 43 active operations right now," he told Subin during one of their regular meetings. "Rescue missions, infrastructure repair, security operations. Our teams are spread across 300 star systems. And the consortium still hasn't noticed," Subin asked. They noticed the results. Stations that don't fail, trade routes that stay safe, colonies that survive disasters. They just don't notice us. We're too small, too peripheral, too unimportant to credit with anything significant. Subin shook her head. 20 years of this. Sometimes I wonder if we should just tell them. "We tried that at Haven," Junho reminded her. The official report credited equipment malfunction and favorable stellar conditions. "We lost 67 people, and the consortium's response was to schedule a subcommittee review." Dr. Mingi Seo had a different perspective. She was a xenanthropologist who studied how different species perceived each other. Her research had revealed something troubling about humanity's position in the consortium. "It's not malice," she explained to Subin over coffee. "It's cognitive bias. The consortium species evolved in environments that rewarded caution, efficiency, and risk avoidance. They built a civilization based on those values. Then we showed up, and we're different," Subin said. "Very different. We evolved in an environment that rewarded persistence, adaptability, and tolerance for discomfort. We solve problems through endurance rather than elegance. When they see us do something remarkable, their brains literally cannot process it. They rationalize it away because the alternative means rethinking their entire understanding of capability. So they're not ignoring us deliberately. They literally can't see us clearly." Exactly. "You don't measure a fish by its ability to climb trees. They're measuring us by their standards, and by those standards, we're mediocre at best. They can't measure us by our standards because they don't have the framework for it." That conversation was still fresh in Subin's mind when Junho burst into her office. 3 days later, "We have a problem. A big one." He pulled up intelligence reports. The Vrel had returned, and they weren't alone. They had allied with 2 other aggressive species, the Korthon and the Melvik. Together, they had assembled a fleet of 2,000 ships. Their target? Junho said grimly. Talveen Prime, the consortium capital. Subin felt ice in her stomach. When? 3 weeks. Maybe less. They're moving through peripheral systems, gathering strength. The consortium military has been notified, but their response time is 5 weeks minimum.
Oh.
So the capital will fall before help arrives, unless someone else helps. Subin looked at the star charts. Humanity had about 200 military ships now, scattered across dozens of operations. To pull them all together would expose their entire covert network. Every operation they ran would collapse. Years of careful secrecy would end. We don't have a choice, she said finally. Start recall orders. Every ship, every soldier. We're going to Talveen Prime. They'll see us, Junho warned. The whole consortium will see us. Then they'll see us. Send the orders. Assembling the fleet took 12 days. Ships came from everywhere, abandoning their secret missions, revealing their military nature. On New Sol, soldiers who had been training in hidden bases came into the open. The consortium finally noticed that something was happening. Regent Thalas, one of the senior consortium leaders, demanded an explanation. The human ambassador brought him to meet Subin. Dallas was a Talveen like most consortium leadership. His flower petal head tilted in confusion as he looked at the assembled human fleet through the observation window. You have 200 military vessels, he said slowly. Class 7 peripheral species are limited to security forces only. This is a violation of consortium regulations. Yes, Subin agreed. It is. We're about to commit another violation. We're taking our fleet to defend your capital world. Without authorization? Your authorization process takes 6 weeks. The attack comes in 3. Sir, with respect, we don't have time for bureaucracy. Thalas's petals twitched with agitation. This is unprecedented. Unauthorized military action by a peripheral species? The political implications are less important than saving billions of lives, Subin interrupted. We're going with or without your approval. The only question is whether you'll help us or get in our way. The Battle of Talveen Prime would be remembered as the turning point. The Vrel Alliance arrived in force, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They found 200 human ships waiting in orbit. The Vrel commander sent a mocking transmission. 200 ships against 2,000. Withdraw or die. Sebin's response was simple. No. The battle began at dawn and lasted 30 hours. The human fleet used every trick they had learned over 20 years of quiet warfare. They fought in debris fields where sensors were useless. They used ramming tactics and boarding actions. They laid traps and ambushes. Most importantly, they simply refused to give up. Human ships fought while damaged beyond what any consortium vessel would consider survivable. Human crews worked 30-hour shifts without rest, something other species considered physically impossible. Human soldiers boarded enemy ships and fought hand-to-hand in boarding actions that hadn't been seen in consortium space for centuries. On the surface of Talveen Prime, Regent Thalas watched the battle through orbital displays. He had been a bureaucrat his entire life, comfortable in meetings and procedures. Now he was watching beings fight and die to protect his world. A human destroyer was destroyed right in front of his eyes. It had taken damage from 3 Vrel cruisers and was leaking atmosphere. Instead of retreating, it accelerated directly at the largest enemy ship and detonated its reactor. Both ships were destroyed in the explosion. Why? Thalas whispered. Why would they do this? Dr. Minji Seo was standing beside him. She had stayed on Talveen Prime as a diplomatic liaison. Because someone has to. That's the human answer to everything. If something needs to be done, we do it. But the cost. Count the cost after we've won. Not before. When the battle ended, the Vrel Alliance had lost 800 ships and fled. The human fleet had lost 47 vessels. It should have been impossible. 200 ships should not have been able to defeat 2,000. But humans had never cared much about. Subin stood on her damaged bridge and looked at the casualty reports. 3,000 humans dead. It hurt. But millions of Talveen lived because of those deaths. Regent Thalos came to meet her in person. He arrived at her ship in a shuttle, something senior consortium officials almost never did. "Admiral Park," he said formally. "On behalf of the consortium, we." His translator was struggling with his emotional state. "You saved us," he said finally. "And we never even knew you were capable of it. 20 years. You've been protecting us for 20 years, and we never saw it." "We didn't do it for recognition," Subin said. "I know. That makes it worse. Or better." "I'm not sure anymore." Thalos's petals drooped. "I've begun reviewing incident reports. Every unexplained resolution. Every lucky break. Every favorable condition. You were there, weren't you?" "Every time." "Usually," Subin admitted. "Why didn't you tell us?" "We tried." "At Haven, the report said equipment malfunction." Thalos was silent for a long moment. "We measured you by our standards. We saw your high gravity preference and extreme temperature tolerance and classified you as peripheral. We never asked what those traits meant in practical terms." "It means we're stubborn," Subin said with a tired smile. "We survive in places you can't. We work in conditions you find impossible. We keep going when you'd stop. It's not better or worse, just different." The Consortium Council Chamber was the largest room Ji-hoon Park had ever seen. It could hold representatives from all 847 member species, though today only the senior leadership was present. Ji-hoon stood at the center of the circular floor, feeling very small and very old. He was 75 now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still sharp. Subin stood beside him, still in her admiral's uniform. Behind them were representatives of humanity: Governor Minho Lee, Ambassador Hiron Bay, Dr. Mingi Esio, and others who had shaped humanity's path through the consortium. Regent Thalos spoke first. "Captain Ji-hoon Park, 25 years ago. You arrived at registration station Thatneen and were classified as Class 7 peripheral species. We gave you a quarantine world and filed your species as entry number 847. Today, the consortium must reckon with what we failed to see." He gestured, and the chamber's display screens came alive. They showed incident reports. Hundreds of them. Thousands. 3 weeks ago, my staff began a comprehensive review of incident reports from the past 20 years. We looked at every unexplained resolution, every lucky coincidence, every favorable condition that saved lives or infrastructure. Ellis paused. We found a pattern. The screen showed maps of human intervention. Red dots appeared wherever humans had quietly helped. They covered the display like stars in the sky. Station collapses prevented. Pirate attacks stopped. Disasters averted. Colonies saved. In every case, the official reports attributed success to equipment malfunction, favorable stellar conditions, or pure luck. Thalos's voice was heavy. In every case, humans were present. The chamber was silent. Representatives from dozens of species stared at the displays. "Our analysts have concluded that humanity has intervened in 847 crisis points over the past 20 years. They have saved approximately 12 billion lives. They have prevented economic damage estimated at 400 trillion credits. And we never acknowledged any of it." An elderly Korthon representative stood. The Korthon had been part of the alliance that attacked Talveen Prime. This representative was from a different faction, one that had opposed the attack. "Why?" the Korthon asked. "Why would a peripheral species do this? What did you gain?" Ji-hoon stepped forward. He had been asked to speak on humanity's behalf. "Nothing," he said simply. "We gained nothing. We did it because people needed help, and we could help them. That's all. But the cost." Another representative said, "You lost ships, soldiers, resources. For strangers, for species who didn't even acknowledge your existence." "Yes," Ji-hoon agreed. "We did, and we'd do it again. But why?" The question came from multiple voices now. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because that's who we are. When we see someone in trouble, we help. It's not a calculation. It's not a strategy. It's just what we do. Thalos spoke again. The Council has been deliberating on humanity's proper classification. Many have suggested you be elevated to protector species status. You would become our military arm, officially responsible for consortium defense. Subin stepped forward. We decline. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. You decline? Thalos's petals were rigid with surprise. We decline, Subin repeated firmly. We didn't protect the consortium for a job title. We did it because it was right. If you make us your official military, you'll bury us in regulations and procedures. You'll turn what we do naturally into a bureaucratic function. No, thank you.
Right.
Minho joined them. However, we do have a demand, not a request. A demand, and that is, acknowledge us accurately. We're not Class 7 peripheral. We're not high-gravity extremophiles. We're humans, and we're capable of things you're not. That doesn't make us better. It makes us different. Put that in your records. Tell the truth about what we've done. Stop attributing our actions to luck or equipment failure. And recognize, Hiron added, that we're a sovereign power. We'll continue to operate as we have been. We'll help when we can. But we'll do it on our terms, not buried under 20 levels of approval. The chamber was silent again. This was unprecedented. Species didn't dictate terms to the consortium, especially not peripheral species. An old Talvine counselor stood slowly. She was ancient, even by Talvine standards, and her voice was soft but clear. They're right, she said. We failed them. We measured them by our standards and found them marginal. We never asked what their standards meant. They evolved in a harsher environment than most of us. They developed traits we classified as extremophile. We never realized those traits made them exactly what we needed. She looked at Jihoon. My grandson was on Station Helios 12 when the docking ring failed 3 years ago. Human engineers saved him. The official report said the station's automated systems restored functionality. But I knew the truth. I knew, and I was too comfortable with our bureaucracy to challenge it. I apologize. Other voices joined hers. More stories, more acknowledgments. Representatives from dozens of species, each with their own story of human intervention that had been filed away as something else. Thalos raised his hand for silence. The Council will vote on a new classification. But first, Captain Park, you spoke of humanity's nature. Tell us, how do you see your place in the consortium? Jihoon looked at his daughter, at his fellow humans, then back at the assembled representatives. We're not your protectors, he said. We're not your soldiers. We're not your servants. We're your neighbors. We live in the same galaxy, face the same challenges, share the same space. When your house is burning, we bring water. Not because we're paid to, not because it's our job, but because that's what neighbors do. But you're so few, a representative said. 40 worlds compared to our 40,000. How can you sustain this level of intervention? We don't measure our worth by how many worlds we own, Subin said. We measure it by what we do with what we have. 40 worlds with people who care can do more than 40,000 worlds with people who don't. The vote came hours later. Humanity was reclassified as a sovereign protectorate species, a new category created specifically for them. They were recognized as an independent power within the consortium, with the freedom to operate as they chose and the acknowledgement of their capabilities. More importantly, the consortium began a comprehensive historical revision. Every incident where humans had intervened was re-examined and corrected. The true stories were added to the records. The 67 dead from Haven were finally recognized. The thousands who had died in other actions were honored. The quiet war became official history, but the real change was cultural. Species across the consortium began to understand that humans were different, and that difference was valuable. Human traits that had been classified as extremophile were now recognized as exceptional adaptability. Their stubbornness was recognized as persistence. Their risk-taking was recognized as courage. 20 years later, old Jihoon Park stood in the same spot where his daughter Subin had spoken. But this time, the ceremony was different. It was the 50th anniversary of humanity's entry into the consortium. and Jihoon had been asked to speak to a gathering of young beings from across the empire. The chamber was filled with children and young adults from hundreds of species. Some were Talveen, some Korthon, some from species Jihoon didn't recognize, and scattered among them were young humans. 50 years ago, Jihoon said, his voice still strong despite his age, humanity stumbled into your empire. We were classified as peripheral, given a quarantine world, and largely forgotten. For many years I was angry about that. I thought we deserved better. He smiled. I was wrong. We didn't deserve better. We had to earn our place, just like everyone else. The difference is, we earned it quietly. We helped people without asking for credit. We did what needed to be done without waiting for permission. A young Talveen raised a hand. Sir, why didn't you tell us sooner? Why stay hidden? Because we thought you wouldn't listen, Jihoon admitted. And we were right at first. But eventually, actions speak louder than words. We let our actions speak for us. A human child, maybe 10 years old, asked, Are we still different from everyone else? Yes, Jihoon said. You'll always be different. You'll be able to work in places others can't. You'll endure conditions others find impossible. You'll see problems others miss. And that's okay. Different isn't better or worse. It's just different. But what if people still don't notice us? The child asked. Jihoon knelt down to the child's level. Then you keep doing what's right anyway. The most important work is often the work nobody sees. Be the person who helps because helping matters, not because helping is noticed. He stood and looked across all the young faces. Some of you will be diplomats. Some will be traders. Some will be engineers or soldiers or artists. Whatever you do, remember this. Being necessary is more important than being noticed. And if you're truly necessary, eventually people will notice. It just takes time. The ceremony ended with a presentation of new consortium educational materials. For the first time, human history was taught alongside the histories of other species. The story of the quiet years, when humans protected an empire that didn't know they existed, became a standard part of consortium education. New Seoul had grown into one of the major cities in the consortium. It was a pilgrimage site now, where young beings came to learn about the species that saved an empire before the empire knew it needed.